A V12 engine is a V engine with 12 cylinders mounted on the crankcase in two banks of 6 cylinders each, usually but not always at a 60 degrees angle to each other, with all 12 pistons driving a common crankshaft. Since each cylinder bank is essentially a straight 6 which is by itself in both primary and secondary balance, a V12 is automatically in primary and secondary balance no matter which V angle is used, and therefore it needs no balance shafts. A 4-stroke 12-cylinder engine has an even firing order if cylinders fire every 60 degrees of crankshaft rotation. So a V12 with cylinder banks at a multiples of 60 degrees will have even firing intervals without using split crankpins. By using split crankpins or ignoring minor vibrations, any V angle is possible. The 180 degrees configuration is usually referred to as a flat 12 engine or a boxer, although it is in reality a 180 degrees V since the pistons can and normally use shared crankpins. Applications: these engines deliver power pulses more often than engines with 6 or 8 cylinders, and the power pulses have triple overlap which eliminates gaps between power pulses and allows for greater refinement and smoothness in a luxury car engine, at the expense of much greater cost. In a racing car engine, the rotating parts of a V12 can be made much lighter than a V8 with a cross-plane crankshaft because there is no need to use heavy counterweights on the crankshaft and less need for the inertial mass in a flywheel to smooth out the power delivery. Exhaust system tuning is also much more difficult on a cross-plane V8 than a V12, so racing cars with V8 engines often use a complicated bundle of snakes exhaust system, or a flat-plane crankshaft which causes severe engine vibration and noise. This is not important in a race car if all-out performance is the only goal, since cost and fuel economy are usually important even in luxury and racing cars. The V12 has been largely phased out in favor of engines with fewer cylinders. In a large displacement, high-power engine, a 60 degrees V12 fits into a longer and narrower space than a V8 and most other V configurations, which is a problem in modern cars but less so in heavy trucks, and seldom a problem in large stationary engines. The V12 is common in locomotive and battle tank engines, where high power is required, but the width of the engine is constrained by tight railway clearances or street widths, while the length of the vehicle is more flexible. It is often used in marine engines where great power is required, and the hull width is limited, but a longer vessel allows faster hull speed. In twin propeller boats, two V12 engines can be narrow enough to sit side by side, while three V12 engines are sometimes used in high-speed three-propeller configurations. Large, fast cruise ships can have 6 or more V12 engines. In historic piston engine fighter and bomber aircraft, the long, narrow V12 configuration used in high-performance aircraft made them more streamlined than other engines, particularly the short, wide radial engine. During World War II, the power of fighter engines was stepped up to extreme levels using multi-speed superchargers and ultra-high octane gasoline, so the extreme smoothness of the V12 prevented the powerful engines from tearing apart the light airframes of fighters. After World War II, the compact, more powerful, and vibration-free turboprop and turbojet engines replaced the V12 in aircraft applications. Early V12 engines. Marine engines. The first V-type engine was built in 1889 by Daimler, to a design by Wilhelm Maybach. By 1903, V8 engines were being produced for motorboat racing by the Société Antoinette, designs by Elie Couteau and Levavasseur, building on experience gained with inline four-cylinder engines. In 1904, the Putney Motor Works completed a new V12 marine racing engine, the first V12 engine produced for any purpose, known as the Craig door valve engine after Putney's founding partners. The engine mounted pairs of L-head cylinders at a 90-degree included angle on an aluminium crankcase, using the same cylinder pairs that powered the company's standard two-cylinder car. A single camshaft mounted in the central V operated the valves directly. As in many marine engines, the camshaft could be slid longitudinally to engage a second set of cams, giving valve timing that reversed the engine's rotation to achieve a stern propulsion. Starting is by pumping a charge into each cylinder and switching on the trembler coils. A sliding camshaft gave direct reversing. The camshaft has fluted webs and main bearings in graduated thickness from the largest at the flywheel end, displacing 1,120 cu. The engine weighed 950 pounds and developed 150 bhp. Little is known of the engine's achievements in the 40-foot hull for which it was intended, while using the engine to power heavy freight vehicles was not realized. One V12 door-valved marine engine was found still running in a Hong Kong junk in the late 1960s. Two more V12s appeared in the 1909-10 motorboat racing season. The Lamboat Namp Engine Company of Clinton, Iowa built a 1,559 cu engine for the company's 32-foot Lam IV. It weighed in at 2,114 pounds. No weight is known for the mass of 3,464 cu in F-head engine built by the Orleans Motor Company. Output is quoted as nearly 400 bhp. By 1914, when Panhard built two 2,356 cu in engines with four-valve cylinder heads, the V12 was well established in motorboat racing. Motor car engines. In October 1913, Louis Cotalin, chief engineer of the Sunbeam Car Company, entered a V12-powered car in the Brooklands short and long handicap races. The engine displaced 9L with bore and stroke of 80 by 150 mm. An aluminum crankcase carried two blocks of 3 cylinders each along each side, with a 60-degree included angle. The cylinders were of iron, with integral cylinder heads with L-shaped combustion chambers. Inlet and exhaust valves were operated by a central camshaft in the V. The valve clearance was set by grinding the relevant parts, the engine lacking any easy means of adjustment. This pointed to Cotalin's ultimate aim of using the new V12 as an Aero engine, where any adjustment method that could go wrong in flight was to be avoided. As initially built, the V12 was rated 200 bhp at 2,400 revolutions per minute, weighing about 750 pounds. The engine powered the car to several records in 1913 and 1914. Early Aero engines. In 1909, Renault pioneered Aero V12s with a 60-degree air-cooled engine with individual fin cylinders and F-head valve arrangement, driven by a single camshaft in the crankcase. This was developed to a 12.2L unit which weighed 350 kilograms and produced 138 bhp at 1,800 revolutions per minute. The propeller was driven from the nose of the camshaft in the central V, rather than from the crankshaft, thus providing an automatic half-speed reduction, improving propeller efficiency. Renault's designs were closely followed in Britain by the the Royal Aircraft Factory. Its RAF-4 engine displaced 13.2 L, produced 140 bhp at 1,800 revolutions per minute, for a weight of 637 pounds. Its RAF-4A derivative was produced in substantial numbers during the war. By 1912, ABC Motors were offering a water-cooled engine of 17.4 L, claimed to produce 170 bhp at 1,400 revolutions per minute and weigh 390 to 520 pounds with radiator and coolant. In March 1914, Sunbeam exhibited an airborne version of Toodle's V's engine at Olympia. Racing in 1913 had helped to prove the design, and encouraged a 10 mm increase in bore to 90 mm, the stroke remaining at 150 mm. Its rated output was 225 bhp at 2,000 revolutions per minute. Named the Mohawk, the engine was the most powerful available to British aviation at the outbreak of World War I. During the war, further enlargement to 100 by 150 mm created the 240 bhp Gurkha. Later V12s in aviation. By the end of World War I, V12s were well established in aviation, powering some of the newest and largest fighters and bombers and being produced by companies such as Renault and Sunbeam. Many Zeppelins had 12-cylinder engines from German manufacturers Maybach and Daimler. Austro-Daimler of the Austro-Hungarian Empire produced also V12s, designed by Ferdinand Porsche, with first 300 and later 345 horsepower, used with the big flying boats of the Naval Air Force. Various U.S. companies produced the Liberty L12. Soon after the end of WW1, V12 engines powered the first transatlantic crossings by the Curtiss Sense flying boats, the first non-stop crossing by Alcock and Brown in a Vickers VME. V12 engines reached their apogee during World War II. Fighters and bombers used V12 engines such as the British Rolls-Royce Merlin and Griffon, the Soviet Klimov VK-107 and Mikulin AM-38, the American Allison V1710 or the German Daimler-Benz DB600 series and Junkers Jumo. These engines generated about 1,000 horsepower at the beginning of the war and above 1,500 horsepower at their ultimate evolution stage. The German DB605 DC engine reached 2,000 horsepower with methanol water injection, called MW50 equipment. In contrast to most Allied V12s, the engines built in Germany by Daimler-Benz, Junkers Jumo, and Argus were primarily inverted, which had the advantages of lower centers of gravity and improved pilot visibility for single-engine designs. Only the pre-war origin BMW V12 of Germany was an upright engine. The United States had the experimental Continental IV1430 inverted V12 engine under development, with a higher power-to-weight ratio than any of the initial versions of the German WW2 inverted V12s, but was never developed to production status, with only 23 examples of the Continental inverted V12 ever being built. The only American-design inverted V12 engine of any type to see even limited service in World War II was the air-cooled Ranger V770, which found use in stateside-based training aircraft like the Fairchild at 21-gunner twin-engined Advanced Trainer. The Rolls-Royce Merlin V12 powered the Hawker Hurricane and Supermarine Spitfire fighters that played a vital role in Britain's victory in the Battle of Britain. The long, narrow configuration of the V12 contributed to good aerodynamics, while its smoothness allowed its use with relatively light and fragile airframes. The Merlin was also used in the Avro Lancaster and de Havilland Mosquito bombers. In the United States, the Packard Motor Company was licensed by Rolls-Royce to produce the Merlin as the Packard V1650 for use in the North American P-51 Mustang. It was also incorporated into some models of the Curtiss P-40, specifically the P-40F and P-40L. Packard Merlins powered Canadian-built Hurricane, Lancaster, and Mosquito aircraft, as well as the UK-built Spitfire Mark 16, which was otherwise the same as the Mark 9 with its British-built Merlin. The Allison V1710 was the only indigenous U.S.-developed V12 liquid-cooled engine to see service during World War II. A sturdy design, it lacked an advanced mechanical supercharger until 1943. Although versions with a turbo supercharger provided excellent performance at high altitude in the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, the turbo supercharger and its ductwork were too bulky to fit into typical single-engine fighters, while a good performer at low altitudes. Without adequate supercharging, the Allison's high-altitude performance was lacking. After World War II, V12 engines became generally obsolete in aircraft due to the introduction of turbojet and turboprop engines that had more power for the weight, and fewer complications. V12 road cars. In automobiles, V12 engines have not been common due to the complexity and cost. They are used almost exclusively in expensive sports and luxury cars because of the power, smoother operation and distinctive sound. Prior to World War II, 12-cylinder engines were found in many luxury models, including cars from Packard 1916 to 1923 and again from 1932 to 1939, Daimler 1926 to 1937, Hispano-Suiza 1931, Cadillac 1931, Auburn 1932, Franklin 1932, Lincoln 1932 to 1942, Rolls-Royce 1936, and Pierce Aero also 1936. Vehicles with 8, 12, and 16 cylinders provide higher levels of refinement compared to those with fewer cylinders, especially important prior to the general adoption of vibration-isolating engine mounts in the 1930s. Packard's 1916 Twin 6 is widely regarded as the first production V12 automobile engine, with a list price of $1,000. The Auburn was the lowest-priced V12 car ever. Production cost savings were achieved by using horizontal valves which, however, did not result in an efficient and powerful combustion chamber. Between 1916 and 1921, there was a vogue of V12s, during which National copied the Packard engine, and Vidley Motors offered a proprietary engine. Soon after the end of World War I, Lancia offered a 22 degrees V12, Fiat had 60 degrees Model 520. British truck manufacturer Ensign announced a V12 that did not materialize, and in 1926, Daimler offered the first of a full range of sleeve valve double-sixes, 7,136 cc, 3,744 cc, 5,296 cc and 6,511 cc versions remaining available until 1937. In 1927 more entered the market from Cadillac, Franklin, Hispano-Suiza, Porsche, Lagonda, Maybach, Packard, Rolls, Tatra, Voisin, and Walter offering V12 engines. Cadillac and Marmon even developed V16 engines. Improvements in combustion chamber design and piston form enabled lighter V8 engines to surpass the V12 in power starting from the 1930s. Only the smaller H-series Lincoln V12 remained after World War II, and it was replaced by a V8 in 1949. Similarly, as they seemed excessive for the post-war market in Europe, production of V12 engined cars was very limited until the 1960s. Ferrari has traditionally reserved the top V12 engine for the top-of-the-line luxury sports coupes since 1949. Ferrari's closest rival, Lamborghini, has also used the V12 configuration for many of its road cars since the company's inception in 1963. In 1972, Jaguar introduced the XJ12, equipped with a 5.3-liter V12, which continued until the 1996 model year, after which the marque discontinued the 12-cylinder engine. BMW returned to V12 designs for its 7 Series sedan in model year 1986, forcing Mercedes-Benz to follow suit in 1991. While BMW sells far fewer V12 engine 7 Series vehicles than V8 versions, the V12 is marketed in the US, China, and Russia. The BMW-designed V12 is used in Rolls-Royce cars, while the Mercedes engine was installed in Maybach cars. Mercedes S65 AMG, CL65 AMG, and SL65 AMG are powered by a V12 bi-turbo, making 463 kilowatts and 1000 Nm at 2300 to 4300 revolutions per minute. The CL65 AMG has a significant higher cost, but the V12 engine makes them a status symbol. The V12 engine is generally smoother than the other 12-cylinder configuration, the W12, although the W12 is more compact. In 1997, Toyota equipped the Century limousine with a 5.0 LDOH CV12, making it the first and only Japanese production passenger car so equipped. TVR made and tested a 7.7 LV12 called the Speed 12, but the project ended. The only British marques currently using a V12 configuration are Aston Martin, whose Cosworth-developed engine was authorized during the company's ownership by Ford Motor Company, and Rolls-Royce. In 2009, China FAW Group equipped the Hongqi HQE with a 6.0 LDOH CV12, making it the first and only Chinese production passenger car so equipped. Most production V12 engines in road cars have an even firing order, with the uneven firing exceptions such as Aston Martin 5.9L V12 and Mercedes-Benz M275 AMG V12s. In 2008, Audi launched their Q7 model with a 5.9-LITR EV12 twin-turbo diesel engine, making it the first production passenger car so equipped. The engine also appeared in the R8 V12 TDI concept car. Post-war V12 production cars. This is a list of V12-engined production road cars produced since 1945, sorted alphabetically by make. Some tuner companies, such as Brabus, also sell V12 versions of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class and CLS, which were the fastest street-legal sedans upon the respective introductions. Prototypes custom-made with V12 engines. Heavy trucks. Tatra used a 17.6L air-cooled naturally aspirated V12 diesel engine in many of the trucks. For instance, the Tatra T813 uses 19L air-cooled naturally aspirated a turbo V12 diesel engine in Tatra T815. Some large trucks have been fitted with twin V12s that drive a common shaft, although this is often advertised as a V24. GMC produced a large gasoline-burning V12 from 1960 to 1965 for trucks, the Twin 6. It was basically GMC's large-capacity truck 351 V6 double. with 4 rocket covers and 4 exhaust manifolds. 56 major parts are interchangeable between the twin 6 and all other GMC V6 engines to provide greater parts availability and standardization. Its engine displacement was 702 cu and while power was not too impressive at 250 horsepower, torque was 585 pounds-feet. For fire trucks, the rev limiter was increased to produce 299 horsepower at 3,000 revolutions per minute, and torque was increased to 630 pounds-feet at 1,600 to 1,900 revolutions per minute. It was possibly the last gasoline engine used in heavy trucks in the U.S. Fire apparatus manufacturer Seagrave used 2 versions of the Pierce Aero V12 motor starting in 1935. After Pierce Aero ended production in 1938, Seagrave bought the machine tools and continued to build and offer these engines until 1970. American LaFrance, beginning in 1931, also offered apparatus with a series of V12 motors built by Alf but developed from the Lycoming BB motor. Both manufacturers stopped offering a V12 option when fire departments began specifying diesel engines in their orders. Detroit Diesel produced the series 53, 71, 92, and 149 engines as V12s, among other configurations. Auto racing. V12 engines used to be common in Formula One and endurance racing. From 1965 to 1980, Ferrari, Westlake, Honda, BRM, Maserati, Matra, Delahaye, Peugeot, Delage, Alfa Romeo, Lamborghini, and Tecno used 12-cylinder engines in Formula One, either V12 or flat 12. The last V12 engine used in Formula One was the Ferrari 044. On the Ferrari 412 T2 cars driven by Gene Alesi and Gerhard Berger in 1995. In the late 1960s, Nissan used a V12 in the Japanese Grand Prix and again in the early 1990s Group C races. At the Paris Motor Show 2006, Peugeot presented a new racing car, as well as a luxury saloon concept car, both called 908 HDI FAP and 908 RC, and fitted with a V12 diesel engine producing around or even surpassing 700 PS. This took part in the 24 Hours of Le Mans 2007 race, coming in second place after the similarly conceived Audi R10 TDI V12 diesel originally developed for the 2006 season. Large diesel engines. V12 is a common configuration for large diesel engines. Most are available with differing numbers of cylinders in V configuration to offer a range of power ratings. Many diesel locomotives have V12 engines. Examples include the 3,200 horsepower 12 to 710 from Electromotive Diesel and the 4,400 horsepower GE V12 from GE Transportation. Large V12 engines are also common in ships. For example, Wärtsilä offers V12 engines with various cylinder bore diameters between 26 and 50 centimeters with power output ranging from 4,080 to 14,400 kilowatts. These engines are commonly used especially in cruise ships, which may have up to 6 such main engines. The largest medium-speed diesel engine, Wärtsilä 64, was also offered in V configuration, and a single 1.2 V64 prototype with an output of 23,280 kilowatts was produced for an experimental power plant in the late 1990s. Railway V12 diesel engines specs. Railway diesel engines with 12-cylinder developing 500 kilowatts and more, tanks and other AFVs. The V12 is a common configuration for tank and other armored fighting vehicles. Some examples are German Maybach HL120TRM gasoline engine, used on World War II PZKPFW3 and PZKPFWIV tanks. British Rolls-Royce Meteor gasoline engine, derived from the Merlin Aero engine, used on World War II Cromwell and Comet tanks and the post-World War II Centurion and Conqueror tanks. Russian V2 V12 diesel engine, used on World War II T-34, KV-1, KV-2 and IS-2 tanks. Most modern Russian diesel engines for MBTs goes back to V2-based design. American Continental AV1790 engine, produced in gasoline and diesel variants, used on all versions of the Patton tank and on the M103 heavy tank. One of these engines was used to power a hot rod-style car called the Blastoline Special, the 26.6-liter Perkins diesel engine in the Challenger 2 main battle tank and its variants.